My parents completely ignored me and missed every important moment in my life because they were always focused on my brother. So, I purposely didn't tell them that the event they were missing now was my wedding. I have a younger brother, Mike. He is the definition of a man-child and a mama's boy, always complaining and expecting others to cater to him. Just an overall a-hole. Ever since he was born, my parents fussed over him for everything. He's not special needs or anything. He was just born, and my parents completely discarded me. My mom especially went from a loving mother to one of those boy moms people make fun of on the internet. My father still showed me love and support, but he's always been too much of a coward to stand up to my mother and let me win at least once. The only one who stood up for me was my grandpa. I reminded him of his late wife, my grandma, and we had a very special bond. But he lives on the other side of the country, so I couldn't see him often. Mike knows our mom prefers him and loves to shove it in my face. Because of this and his behavior, we've always been at odds. He's spoiled, a brat, and an awful human. I can't remember how often I got in trouble for things I did better than him. His only talent is his football skills. He won a scholarship to a nice college out of state. My parents didn't spend a dime on my education because my fund had been used to cover expenses after a fire, only for me to discover years later that the money was given to Mike to buy a car and a house. It was at the public university that I met Lucas. He was the first person I was drawn to there. Of course, I met new people who are now my dearest friends, and thanks to them and Lucas, who was my best friend for years before we got together, I managed to move out of my parents' house. Lucas and I are well known in our fields and have very good salaries. Now to the main issue. Lucas proposed to me a year ago. We're very private people, so we didn't post it on social media or anything. When I told my parents, they dismissed it with a "that's nice." I'm starting to think they didn't listen to me at all. We wanted a nice but simple ceremony and reception with our friends and relatives. Lucas convinced me to invite my parents and brother, but they never responded to the invite. Whenever I visited and began to talk about my wedding without mentioning it was a wedding, my mom would always speak over me and talk about my brother's accomplishments and wild adventures. At one point, I got fed up with it and interrupted my mom to tell her that there was an event I was planning that had an unmovable date. She told me they couldn't attend because my brother was playing the last game of the season that same day and wanted them to be there. Of course, this favoritism didn't surprise me. They missed my ballet shows and my high school and university graduations for things about him. At this point, I wanted to be petty. I told both my parents that it wasn't a problem for them to miss this event, purposely omitting that it was my wedding, and didn't insist further. Flash forward to a few weeks ago. I got married. It was perfect. My family, Lucas's family, and our friends were all there. My grandpa was happy to give me away, and it was just perfect. My relatives repeatedly asked me why my parents weren't there with us. I was honest and said they had my brother's game to attend and couldn't make it. They gave me a few looks, and my grandpa was visibly angry for a while, but otherwise, nothing strange happened. After the reception, Lucas and I left for our honeymoon and were phone-free for the whole trip. But once we got back, we discovered that a storm was welcoming us home. I turned my phone on and could not even unlock it before a flood of notifications popped up. Most of them were from my mother and brother. Mike called me all sorts of nasty names and insulted me because one of my paternal aunts posted the photos of the wedding on Facebook and captioned it with a very obvious dig at my parents, especially my mom, for missing the wedding. The post went viral in my parents' community, and they've been publicly shamed for their mistreatment of me. It also turns out that my grandpa personally visited my parents to go on a tirade to shame my father, his son, to the point of tears. This seemed to be my father's breaking point because he was so distraught for missing his only daughter's wedding and for his father's disapproval that he finally rebelled against my mom and threatened divorce unless she made it up to me. I think that's why my mom has been spamming my phone with messages. At first, they were insulting, but then they became pitiful, full of begging and pity parties. Now I'm at home with my husband, deciding how to approach the situation. Most of my relatives, even those I didn't invite to the wedding, reached out to apologize for what I went through and claimed they had no idea this was happening at home. Still, My mom's sisters and friends are belittling me for not telling my mom about the wedding because now she's inconsolable at the thought of having missed it. I think she claims that to save face, but I'm unsure. The latest messages from my father and mother seem extremely sad and hurt for missing my wedding. Now my family is divided on 3 fronts. The majority who are sticking by my side, my maternal aunts shaming me for hurting my mom's feelings, and my maternal grandparents who are adamant that I forgive my mom in light of her atonement. My best friends are telling me not to listen to them.